Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're breaking down every SEC football game from a betting standpoint for week 4. And today we're talking about what most people consider the premier matchup this week. That's Texas A&M and Arkansas playing in Jerry's World at a neutral site on Saturday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Bringing in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, what are you thinking about this game this week?
Yeah, Nick, excited to break down another week of SEC football. And this may not be just the premier game in the SEC, but it's definitely got an argument to be the premier game nationally as well. So why don't you lead us off with Nick's news and notes and let us know what's going on around these two programs.
Sure, let's start with the lines. This game opened with Texas A&M as a 5-point favorite. And it's moved just a little bit over the course of the week. It's down to the Aggies by 4.5. The over-under is actually the area that moved the most. It opened at 44.5, and it's up to 47. Looking at the weather for this game, we should be in good shape here. A high of 90, only 7-mile-an-hour wind. And in Jerry's World, can't they control the climate and do whatever they want, right? It's like a carnival in there, right? They do whatever they want. But really what we need to talk about for this game is injuries. Both teams have a lengthy list of players who are definitely out, maybe out. A lot of things that we'll be watching right up until kickoff. We'll start with Texas A&M. First, we know that their starting quarterback, Haynes King, is out indefinitely, had surgery on his leg, missed last week's game. So this is Zach Calzada's team in the meantime. So expect him to start and play for the Aggies. And then also on offense, there's several other names to watch. Anais Smith, wide receiver return man, is questionable for this game. Jimbo termed him day-to-day during the SEC teleconference on Wednesday. So that one will be one that maybe isn't decided until hours before kickoff. Starting guard Layden Robinson missed last game and may not be back in time for this game either, although it seems like their starting center Luke Matthews will be ready to go. And then also wide receiver Caleb Chapman is doubtful for this game. So things are kind of starting to pile up on that side of the ball for the Aggies. Arkansas, all the headlines out of Arkansas this week, really interesting. Treylon Burks, star wide receiver there. You know, the new name, image, likeness rules, was doing a promotion that circled around the internet, and innocent enough until you look down on the bottom of that picture and realize, hey, he's wearing a walking boot. And so, sometimes players wear walking boots, even if they're playing through an injury, just sort of to keep the weight off of an ankle or a foot or something. So still, though, a little bit uneasy going into a big game to see your star player walking around in a boot. So we'll just have to stay tuned to what that might mean for the Razorbacks on Saturday. And then also, if you go down their offensive line, they're dealing with some issues there as well. Center Ricky Stromberg, right tackle Dalton Wagner, both missed practice on Monday. Pittman said that they were going to prepare as though those guys wouldn't be available. So I would tag them probably as questionable as well. And then just getting into some of the narratives for this game real quick. The SEC West, when this season started, we thought A&M might be in the mix, right? And Arkansas was probably still a year or two away. But after we played 3 weeks of SEC football, this game seems extremely important for that race. Number one, Alabama, while they're still number one in the nation and 3-0 after beating Florida narrowly, they kind of look beatable, or at least not as invincible as they've been in previous seasons. So them winning the West is not the given that it has been over the last 2, 3, 4 years. And then you look at Lane Kiffin and Oxford and the offense with Matt Corral and the way they're putting up points at will, and he's kind of starting to develop a little bit of a defense, and you say, okay, well, there's something going on there too. Auburn looked okay when they went to Penn State. Well, I guess what I'm saying is A&M and Arkansas are right in the mix of what looks like it could be a 4 or 5 team race potentially. And so winning this game as their SEC opener for both teams, incredibly important for one of those teams if they want to be a serious contender in the West. So there's a reason this game is the national game to watch. And then I would just say something has to give here between these two teams. Early on, we saw Arkansas go for 38, 40, and 45 points in their first 3 games. So, and by the way, hitting the overs all on the way. And the Aggies have been just as good defensively. They've allowed 10 points, 7 points, 0 points in their first 3 games. So when you put that offense against that defense, what are you going to get? And if you have a good lean on how that's going to play out, you probably have a good start to making a sound bet on this game this weekend, right? And then real quick before I get to Christopher's betting, I need to give Zach Calzada a little bit of love. I was hard on him last week talking about how he came in to replace Haynes King against Colorado and kind of underwhelmed, and they barely won that game. Well, he looked much better in a 34-0 win against New Mexico. Threw for 275 yards, 3 touchdowns. So maybe the Aggies will be okay with him. But Christopher, from a betting perspective, what are you seeing out of this one?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the injuries on both of these teams, and I think that's huge in trying to handicap this game, especially when you look at both offensive lines dealing with some pretty big issues. And I mean, let's face it, the Texas A&M offensive line has been really, really bad this year, regardless. They may be getting back their starting center this week, may still be missing a starting guard, but Calzada reminds me a lot of Bo Nix in that he has happy feet and he gets very agitated when he gets pressure on him and he starts to bail out of the pocket. So I don't take anything away from that New Mexico game that tells me he's going to be fine in the SEC or he's going to be good even. And that's an issue for Texas A&M because they can't run the ball behind that offensive line and they're going to give up more pressure. And you take a look at what are the bright spots for either team in this game? Like, what can you count on? What can you trust? And basically, you look at Arkansas's run defense, and you look especially at the Texas A&M pass defense, and Texas A&M can't run the ball. KJ Jefferson has a great wide receiver, Traylon Burks, who you mentioned, if he's healthy, he's really good. But you're not going to get a ton on the Texas A&M pass defense anyway. So I don't expect either quarterback to crush it. And I expect at least Texas A&M to have a lot of trouble running the ball. And it's not like Texas A&M's front seven is bad. Arkansas is pretty good at running the ball, but that's not going to be easy. At least KJ Jefferson is running for 7.5 yards per carry. So, 3 of these last 7 games have gone to overtime, and there could be some non-offensive touchdowns somewhere along the way. But I don't understand how either of these teams can get into the 30s in this game. And Arkansas, surprisingly, has been running a little bit less tempo than we saw out of this group last year, at least in the early stages. And we know Jimbo Fisher loves to run at a very, very slow pace in terms of his offense. So to me, I'm kind of wondering where the point's going to come from in this game, especially with these injuries. So, Nick, why don't you tell us what you're betting on here?
So I totally understand where you're coming from on where the point's going to come from when you've got injuries on both lines. And really, a Aggies defense that I think is really good. But as I've had some success with early on in this season, when I see an SEC line over under in the 40s, I've just kind of been betting on the over on the idea that we might accidentally get there. You mentioned the game's going to overtime in this series, and they've always been played pretty closely in this Jerry World series. So I'm going to take the over 47, and it's just sort of a hunch to say, I think we may accidentally get there. Arkansas's offense has gotten there almost by themselves over the past 3 weeks, just on the amount of points that they've scored. Obviously, Texas A&M is probably going to keep that a little bit more in check this week, but I still like over 47. And to that point, though, if you're making me pick between these two teams, I think I'd like to take the points. So I'll take Arkansas plus 4.5. It's not a super strong lean for me because I think Texas A&M more than capable of winning this game. But I just can't bet against the Hogs right now and the way that offense has been rolling at the start of this season. And if you're giving me 4.5 points, I like it. How about you?
I'm taking Arkansas plus 4.5. It's not the bet that I love in this game, but Sam Pittman is 10-3 against the spread in Fayetteville. And I think this game will be fairly low scoring, so I don't expect either team to pull away. So back door should be wide open if necessary. And I'm definitely going under 47. This is the bet that I like more in this game. I expect something that's in the 20s, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if one or both of these teams don't even get above 20 in this game. So lock me in for the under 47 and also Arkansas plus 4.5. And for Nick Cole, and I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.